Hello and welcome to the video boss fight guide for the Apex Vanguard, 6th and last boss of the Dxun Nature of Progress operation. Very much gives a throwback to some of Zerka Core Meltdown Flashpoint and some interesting mechanics, particularly for whoever's the lucky person to get to deal with the battery. So it's a fairly straightforward fight. We're going to walk through the mechanics, talk through it to make sure you understand everything. And so you'll be well prepared to clear this fight. So let's get into it. So here's the layout of the room based on the map. So the team starts pulling Apex at the west, right when you load in, with him just standing right there as the welcoming committee. Now the key thing to be aware of is there are 5 stations around the room. This is going to be more relevant for the battery runner, but it's important just to know. And then there's the power transformer as part of the middle console on the west side. Now, these all relate to various mechanics that we'll see, but we'll talk about briefly here. So there are 2 group-wide mechanics that have to be mitigated via carrying the battery. One of those is handled through the disruptor station on the north, which is the mass target lock. When this goes out, everybody in the group gets a debuff that if it is not cleansed by using the disruptor station, the group will get hit by bombardment 30 seconds later that deals a lot of damage unless the boss is very, very low on stacks of Darkness Overdrive, may wipe the group. The other one that goes out is the Red Venom. This is effectively the same mechanic you saw in Red, the first encounter, where you get a stacking dot that ticks at 1 stack and then ticks to 2 and 3 and so on. It's cleansed using the fan station on the east side of the room. And then the more relevant mechanic for everybody staying on the boss is the Acid Blast circles, which we'll see momentarily. And those persist on the ground and don't otherwise go away, but they can be cleansed using the wash station on the south, which sprays the floors with a sprinkler system essentially and washes those puddles away. Now there are 2 other stations. At the northeast is the flare station, southeast is the stim station. Those are not required for story mode. They weren't even active prior to the release of master mode. At the current fight settings, those stations are active but can be ignored, so they won't really be discussed here. Look for details of both text guide and video guides and walkthroughs on the hard mode fight to understand how to use the flare station and stim station. The super quick version is you can use flares similar to the 2nd and 3rd trash pulls where you put a flare on the ground and the boss, if you put the boss in him, he doesn't gain stacks of Darkness Overdrive. The southeast is the stims, which those are the stims you used primarily for movement in the 2nd and 3rd ad rush encounters. You can use them here as effectively a DPS boost or a heal boost, or even as a defensive cooldown. This layout of the room is good to know. Again, primarily important for the battery runner, but if you've never run the battery before, it's always good to understand it because that's going to be the biggest key to success. So the more people that know how to do it, that know how to help or take a turn or know how to pick it up if someone dies, the better. I'm going to talk about the battery mechanics in a separate video. Okay, so again, we'll get into the video and kind of the flow of things quickly, but I like to get this stuff out of the way first. So how's the boss going to move? So generally what I think is the most efficient way to tank the boss is the tank grabs the boss, and you can start at either end. You either start on the north side, just a little bit apart, just a little bit to the left of the disruptor station, or you can start at the south a little bit. Well, from this perspective, it's to the left. As you're facing the wash station, it would be to your right of the wash station. And what you basically do is the tank's going to hold the boss there till an acid blast yellow circle goes out, and then you're going to shift the boss and move just outside of that circle, and you're going to drop them where each one overlaps on each other, and you're going to work your way around the room. Ideally, by the time you make your way around to the other station, whichever direction you're going, by that point in time, the battery runner will have had a chance to get to the wash station and wash the floors. Anytime that happens, the tank should pull the boss to whichever end they're on, should pull them back to one end of that kiting path. And so they're kind of going back and forth and back and forth. I think that's really, really easy. It minimizes the chances of putting an acid blast circle, which we'll talk about, in a position where the battery runner has to walk through it and take damage. An alternative strategy is you can tank Apex so that you're dropping those puddles in between each station. And so you basically, instead of reversing paths, as I'm describing here, you could just say, well, I'm going to take them clockwise or counterclockwise, and you just keep moving that direction at all times. If worst comes to worst and you run out of room, you can also drop puddles up against the inner circle device thing. You want to try to avoid dropping circles on top of the battery transformer, but you can if you have to. But again, hopefully the battery runner gets you a good wash, and it's not really an issue. But anyway, here's the layout. Okay, so let's actually get into the fight and see what's happening and talk through the mechanics. Okay, so now we're starting the fight. We're going to position Apex Vanguard wherever the tank wants to hold them. Again, I talked through, in my view, pulling them to the north or south is going to be most efficient. But there's many ways to do it, and some are arguably a little more efficient, but none are. It shouldn't really be that big a deal. So we're holding the boss, and for the first 7 to 8%, it's just tank and spank. We're DPSing the boss. After a period of time, we're going to start to see some mechanics. At this point, the two most important mechanics aren't happening. So here's the first one, which is photogenesis. When that happens, after that happens, going forward, anytime the lights are on, the boss is going to regenerate health. So we want to minimize that. As soon as that happens, all the DPS need to go to the power transformer, because we need to get the battery out so that we can get the lights off, because if he keeps regenerating health, it's tough to beat him. So now, whoever's carrying the battery takes it out, and now he starts this Darkness Overdrive cast. Once that happens, we now have both of the main mechanics for Apex, which is when the lights are off, he has Darkness Overdrive and he'll pick up stacks. You'll see it on the focus target bar here in a moment, and that will, so there's one stack. He can get up to 20. Each stack in story mode buffs his damage by 8 to 10%, so he can get up to triple damage. Now here's Contagion. This goes out periodically. It is a ticking dot. It also ticks for anyone inside the circle, so overlapping a bunch of those can really hurt. You should self-cleanse. If you have a self-cleanse or a purge, you should use it. If you can spec into it with utility, you should do so. The most common cause of a wipe in this fight, other than issues with the battery, is people taking too much damage from the dot that leaves healers behind on healing, so that when you do take burst damage, you can't keep up with it. And it'll go out fairly frequently. It'll go out it'll go out less than a minute apart. So here's the first of those big mechanics we talked about, Red Venom. So if you're not the battery runner, the battery runner's going to handle it. So they just got cleansed. So your goal is, if you're low on health, pop a defensive. That's the time when you should need it. Avoid standing in acid blast puddles if you can. As you can see, you can stand in a little bit. They don't hurt too bad. The boss here is up to 12 stacks of Darkness Overdrive, so any damage he does is going to deal a lot more. He primarily has his single target attack. He also has a AoE based missile attack that'll go out periodically. And it's very noticeable, both the sound, audio cue, and you'll notice you take damage. Try to avoid stacking as much as you can, because that missile attack is an AoE based attack. And if he's at really high stacks, here he's at like 16, 17 stacks. So there's that missile attack I mentioned. Deals a fair bit. This particular example, we have two NIM level healers, so it looks like it's super easy, but depending on your group, that can be very challenging, especially in 16-man. Okay, so now we just had the missile target lock. So you can see the target looking debuff on everyone's bar there, briefly. If that's not cleansed through the disruptor station in 30 seconds, then the group's probably going to wipe. So here's zone defense. Zone defense you can kind of ignore, and skillful positioning by the tank can mitigate. So what happens is, you see there's a left, everyone got the left purple. If you look, it's tough to see the two turrets on his shoulders. The left one's purple and the right one's yellow. Whichever side you're closest to when that cast goes out, you get the opposite buff. And so the idea is, whichever color you get, if you stand on the opposite side, so you match the color, then you will be safe. So ideally, what you do if you know the cast is coming, and you don't have to do this in story mode, but you can, it's helpful, is you turn the boss opposite the path you're kiting him briefly, so that everyone's on his right, let's say his right side in this case, and then you immediately turn him the other way, and now basically no one takes any damage. If that doesn't happen, people will take extra AoE damage. Not a big deal. If you're low on health, pop a defensive, help your healers out. The main thing is to cleanse, to avoid stacking those green circles if you don't have a cleanse, to give your healers time to cleanse you. Don't stand in the acid blast puddles if you don't have to. and in fact, you generally don't have to, so don't do it unless if people are low on health. Some classes can proc extra damage. If you're high on health, great. If you don't. Dead DPS, don't do any DPS. Try to save your defensives if you can for the burst AoE damage or that acid, the red venom clouds. If those go out and the battery runner may say sometimes, hey, I'm still getting a wash, I'm a little behind, you may need to pop a defensive because those can hurt. But that's really it. It's just cycling back and forth, the Acid Blast puddles, cleanse Contagion, and the battery runner does a lot of work here. The main key is, depending on your group composition, depending on the stacks of Darkness Overdrive here, we're kind of ignoring those stacks of Darkness Overdrive. He's at 20 most of the fight because most of our group here are progression folks, hard mode, Nim folks. So we're doing those of us who can cleanse are doing a good job. Our healers are like crazy good. So we're just kind of healing through it all because we can. For most story mode groups, you're not going to be able to do that. So the key is, don't stay in an Acid Blast, cleanse Contagion. Here our tank is actually stacking multiple Acid Blast puddles because you can do that, but again, I don't recommend it. And we're kind of cheesing stuff. For the battery runner, it's going to be important to try to keep those stacks of Darkness Overdrive down so that the healing is manageable, because fundamentally, the key to success in this fight is being able to heal through damage when it spikes, either due to the dot or due to stacks of Darkness Overdrive or due to Contagion, and the person running the battery. Those are the two keys to success, and everybody else's job is to help facilitate those as much as possible. So that's the fight. It's a much more straightforward fight than the Trandoshans or Huntmaster. So good luck, Dxun. Hope this was helpful. Best of luck. Thanks for watching. Bye.